Much for being here.
My pleasure, Maria. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for your leadership on this bill. You are the chairwoman of the Senate Subcommittee on Digital Assets. Can you tell us more about this updated language and what your expectations are for the Clarity Act?
Maria, we put out language with the comprehensive bill yesterday so people could see what it looks like to have the agriculture's work, the banking committee's work, the ethics committee's work, the judiciary's committee's work all combined into one piece of legislation. And yes, we're still challenged by the bankers' allegations that this will reduce deposits and make less money available for lending. There's actually no proof of that. As you just pointed out, deposits in banks are up since the Genius Act passed a year ago, and yet that is what they're trying to amend. They're trying to use the Clarity Act to amend the Genius Act that passed a year ago, even though there's no indication that it's going to hurt their deposits. So we're fighting against and trying to work against something there's no proof of. It's just a concern. We're also dealing, of course, with the president's willingness to subject himself and Melania Trump to the most restrictive ethics language that a president has ever subjected himself to. But of course, there's no pleasing Democrats at this point. So we're facing some headwinds.
Yeah, I know that. And let me get your take on that, because it seems like you're going to have to even make more concessions on the language around ethics to secure the Democrat support, right? Because, look, you had several Democrats last night voicing concerns about the updated text, particularly around the bill's enforcement mechanism. That places responsibility on the Attorney General. Is that the issue right now?
That is kind of a bright line. You know, we had worked until there was an impasse with Democrats earlier this month because they want state attorneys general to be able to sue elected officials that are subject to this ethics law. And so that would allow, for example, an attorney general from another state to sue me if they thought I violated the ethics law. So when I ran that by senators, they said, we don't want that. And so this ethics provision is not just applicable to the president and the vice president. It's applicable to every House member, every senator, and every federal judge. So we're trying to not plan legislation around one person who holds one office for the next 2 years, but rather over time that will serve the House, the Senate, the judiciary, and the executive branch in a fair way. The struggle is, of course, a lot of Democrats are absolutely focused on one person, and that's President Trump. So since President Trump actually agreed that he would have the choice to either put his assets in a blind trust or divest of his participation in digital assets and companies that derive revenue from digital assets, somehow that's not enough. I think it's going to be a struggle. Fortunately, Tom Tillis is working with Democrats to continue to try to find a way that they could support the ethics provisions in this bill. But it's hard for me to see it right now because they're so focused on getting a pound of flesh from President Trump.
I mean, do you think so? You do think that the president will accept some guardrails here? I mean, you think that the president will accept some provisions, but it's not going to be enough for the Democrats. I mean, they want to get this passed. They understand the need to be #1 across the world in digital assets, though, right?
Well, I hope so. And quite frankly, 90% of the spot market is overseas. 80% of the digital asset futures market is overseas. I don't know if they understand how significant it would be if the Clarity Act failed and we allowed this industry to continue to grow and mature overseas, because they won't come back once they get certainty in Singapore, for example. They'll stay there. So it's important that we address this now. I do believe that we'll continue to work on it for the next few days, but we've been working on it for 11 months. And maybe the last 6 of those months have been 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So there's a point at which we just have to vote, Maria. We just have to vote.
Yeah, you've done such a great job on this, Senator. And so what are you looking at? You're looking at like 8 or 10 Democrat votes that you need to actually end debate and get this across the finish line? Or do you expect that even if you get that the president could still veto it?
The president won't veto the ethics language that is in there now. And I don't see any other substantive provisions of the bill preventing the president from signing the bill. So the problem is not the president. The problem seems to lie in the U.S. Senate. The banks are putting on a full-court press that's scaring some senators. The ethics part with the Democrats is still a sticking point, I believe. So, next week, we've got Lindsey Graham memorial service on Tuesday, Lindsey Graham funeral on Wednesday, so we'll have some absenteeism. Quite frankly, that gives us a few more days to try to continue to work on this.
So you think you're still going to try to get it over the finish line by the time you leave for the August recess? What do you think?
That's still my goal.
Yeah.
And so I continue to work diligently with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to try to find the sweet spot. But I want to vote on it before we leave for the August recess, because I even personally am losing the ability to muster the enthusiasm after 11 months of negotiating to try to find an answer that pleases everyone.
Yeah, it's a great point on the banks talking with the senators and a little fear-mongering going on as well. Senator, you've done a great job on this. You've got to feel proud of the leadership, and we'll be watching. Thank you so much for walking us through it.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, Senator.